this session, we're going to discuss how to create a law school outline. Outlining is such an important skill to have in law school, so we're really excited to share this step-by-step guide so that you will feel well prepared to outline right from the beginning of law school. So before you start outlining, the first thing you want to do is gather your materials together. You want to have your syllabus, your class notes, your casebook, any supplements that you're using, your laptop, and a big cup of coffee or a glass of water or whatever will help you get through this outlining process, because outlining is hard work. Next, step 1 is to review your syllabus. Your syllabus is actually super helpful because it will give you an overview of the entire class. It's basically like a skeleton outline. In a lot of cases, you can use the same headings in your syllabus as headings in your outline. So basically, it tells you exactly how to organize your outline. For example, look at this torts syllabus. Heading 1 is an introduction to the course, where you cover class policies and review the syllabus. Heading 2 talks about intentional torts like intent, assault, battery, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defenses to intentional torts. And then headings 3, 4, and 5 are duty, breach, and causation. These are basically elements of negligence. And then lastly, there are defenses. So these headings could also be the same headings in your outline. It's basically giving you a little cheat sheet on how to organize your outline. Keep in mind that you do not need to include every little thing in your syllabus in your outline. For example, you don't really need to include the introduction to the course where you discuss class policies in the syllabus because you probably won't be tested on that. Step 2 is to add rules. So once you have basically what topics you're going to be outlining, you want to make sure that you add rules to these appropriate topics. One big mistake that 1Ls make, and this is specific to first-year law students, is they tend to organize their outlines around cases rather than rules. And it's nice to have cases in your outline, and we'll talk about how to incorporate them in a minute, but your outline should not be organized around cases because cases are merely illustrations of the law. Your outline should be organized around the law, and then cases can serve to illustrate that law. So for example, let's just look at that little excerpt of intentional torts. That was a heading in the outline that we just looked, or in the syllabus that we just looked at. So you can see A was intent, B discussed assault, battery, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, or IIED, and C discussed defenses to intentional torts. Okay, so for each of these topics, you would like a rule. You can use a few different resources to find rules. You can use your class notes. This is your best resource. If your professor says the rule, use whatever your professor states the rule is. Remember, your professor writes your exam and grades your exam, so whatever they say the rule is can go right into your outline. If your professor did not explicitly state the rule, you can use your casebook or class supplements, or you can use another supplement, outline, or resource. For example, you get our Law School 1 sheets for free as part of this course. Let me just give you an example here. Here's torts, and it starts with intentional torts. You can see assault, battery, false imprisonment, IIED, trespass, conversion, all kinds of things, and the rule is listed right there. This is all in small font because we have the entire overview of torts in a 1-page front and back, and so the font's very small, so you probably have to zoom in to properly see what the rules are. Okay, so in our hypo here, we have intent, we need a rule for that, and then we have these intentional torts, assault, battery, false imprisonment, and IIED. We need rules for those. So in this case, we just used the 1 sheet and we plugged in the rules in blue font. The issue with this, if you look at this, it's hard to read. It's hard to read, it's hard to learn those rules. So even though the rules are there, you want to set up your outline so that it's actually easy to learn. So let's go to the next page here. It's much easier to set up your outline like this. You can see assault, battery, false imprisonment, IIED. They have the exact same rules, but they're separated into their component elements. So assault is divided into 3 elements. The defendant acts, the defendant has intent to cause a harmful or offensive contact or imminent apprehension, and an imminent apprehension directly or indirectly results. So we have an act, intent, and imminent apprehension. For battery, the rule is again divided into act, intent, and harmful or offensive contact. And you can see how this is much easier to read than something like this, where the rule is just in one long sentence. So you want to set up your outline so that you're able to learn it. So divide the rule into its component elements, and it'll make it much easier for you to actually learn that rule. Next, add cases. People wonder, what cases should I add? How much of these cases should I add? Should I include entire case briefs? And basically, what you want to do is add the cases that you spend time discussing in class. Remember, I'll say it again, your professor writes your exam, your professor grades your exam. So whatever your professor thinks is important should go into your outline. If your professor spends an hour discussing a case in class, it should go in your outline. If they only spend 30 seconds discussing a case, it probably does not need to go in your outline. So for example, Garrett v. Daly, this could be added into the outline. Do you need an entire case brief? No. Garrett v. Daly is summarized in literally 2 sentences. Basically a sentence that kind of states the facts and a sentence that talks about the law. You don't need a detailed factual analysis. This should not be an entire case brief, just something in 2 short sentences. And you can add the case right where it belongs in your outline. For example, Garrett v. Daly illustrates intent. It says age is not determinative of whether a defendant can be held liable for an intentional tort so long as he had the requisite intent. So a 6-year-old could be held liable when he pulled the chair out from under a plaintiff who was about to sit down. That tells you the exact facts, the exact law, written in one concise paragraph, and that's basically how cases should look in your outline. You can see there's another case here, the Lopez case, which illustrates false imprisonment, and it's right under false imprisonment in your outline. Next, add hypotheticals. Sometimes professors will change the facts or give you new facts in class, and they'll call on students and ask them what the answer is. So it's basically these hypothetical fact patterns that the professor invents. A lot of students stop typing and stop taking notes when professors review these hypos, but it's very important to type out those hypotheticals and pay attention to them, because your professor is basically showing you different ways to apply the law to a different set of facts. So I recommend that you even include them right in your outline. Include them in hypo form. So for example, you can see a hypo here in green font. What if I'm a black belt in karate and a really big tough guy, and a small guy comes up, balls up his fist, and says he's going to punch me in the stomach? I'm not afraid he's going to hurt me. Can I successfully sue for assault? Yes, because imminent apprehension does not mean fear. So this hypo might not mean much to you if you haven't started law school, but basically you can see the last element of assault is imminent apprehension. And this hypo is illustrating the fact that you can still apprehend contact, not necessarily be afraid, but sue for assault. If there's this really big, tough guy who's a black belt in karate, and a small guy comes up and punches him, even though he might not be afraid of the small guy, he still doesn't want to be punched in the stomach, right? And so he can still sue for assault based on the imminent apprehension that he feels. So hypos can illustrate different points like that, and you can add them right into your outline under the appropriate rule. Step 6, highlight ambiguities. Sometimes one law differs from another law. Majority law will differ from minority law. One case says one thing, a statute says something else. Law students don't like this because we want the right answer, okay? We're programmed to want the right answer. But in a lot of cases, there isn't a right answer. There are just different approaches. And rather than ignoring these or trying to run away from them, instead you should embrace them and you should highlight them in your outline, because these are prime areas for testing. Professors love to test gray areas where the result could turn out in a couple different ways. A quick note on formatting and color coding your outline. Some students like black and white outlines that look just like this, and that's fine. There is not one right way to format or color code an outline. Other students like more colorful outlines. For example, here, cases are highlighted in yellow, rules are highlighted in blue, hypos are in red. This is another way to make your outline. If you're a more visual learner, you might appreciate a more colorful outline. If you're an auditory learner or you don't find yourself very visual, then you might want to stay away from color. So just do whatever works for you. You can also add images in your outline. For example, in the JD Advising Law School study aids, we have outlines that include images to illustrate the rules. For example, assault could be illustrated with an act, intent, and apprehension. Battery looks kind of similar. There's an act, intent, and there's a contact. Okay, so sometimes it's helpful to illustrate the rules with images. You can use images from our outlines if you purchase our law school study aids, or you can just draw your own images to illustrate the rules. This will especially help you if you are a visual learner. So that's an overview of how to create a law school outline. Good luck getting started on your outlines.